Hello everyone, this is Joseph, and I'm bringing you Oona, Queen of the Fae, and she's a 5/5 flying fairy wizard for 3 generic and 3 hybrid island swamp mana, and she has an activated ability where you can pay X with a hybrid island or swamp, and choose a color, and target opponent removes cards from the top of his or her library equal to X, and for every card of the chosen color, you get a 1/1 black and blue fairy rogue creature with flying. So this is kind of a token strategy slash mill strategy. So some key cards to make Oona work is the Mana Ramp package. So I'm running 10 Mana Rocks. I have Soul Ring, Dimir Signet, Talisman of Dominance, Sapphire Medallion, Doubling Cube. This one's really good because it doubles all your mana in your mana pool. Ideally, I'm trying to run all the cheapest, most impactful Mana Rocks. Then I have Thran Dynamo, Hedron Archive, because this can also draw you cards in the late game. Cryptgeist. This can double the amount of swamps you have in your mana pool. Gilded Lotus, and Mangus of the Coffers, and Caged Sun. So these are my 10 Mana Rocks. They're all designed just to get as much mana available so I can use Oona's ability and get lots of 1/1 fairies. Now after the Mana Rocks, I am running 5 tutors and 9 card draw spells. So a big part of this deck also needs to be drawing lots of cards, keeping its gas going. So I'm running Skull Clamp to kill off the fairies and draw some cards. This one is kind of a tutor, not quite. It's a budget option, but lets you look through the top 5 cards of your library, pay additional life to keep doing so. Windfall, Blue Sun Zenith, Geth's Grillamore. I am running some discard-esque stuff, so this can potentially draw me lots of cards if my opponents are discarding cards. Ancient Excavation, Whispering Madness, Hoden of Seeing Winds. I'm running the other Shrine as well. I wanted to try utilizing some cards in this deck that I don't typically run. Like, ideally you would want Aristic Study instead of this, but, you know, this is a deck that will actually make use of the Shrines. And then Sire of Stagnation. So whenever an opponent plays a land, you get to draw 2 cards and exile 2 cards from the top of their library. So this contributes to your mill strategy and drawing you cards. So I think it's an excellent powerhouse. Next I have my 5 tutor spells. So Fabricate, Diabolic Tutor, Ancestral Memories. I picked this up at a flea market just recently, and I think it has potential of being really powerful. It's kind of like Dig Through Time, and I would agree that Dig Through Time is better, but this puts cards into your graveyard, which, if you have cards of flashback or various things, you can actually get extra benefit from them. So it kind of is like a Fact or Fiction sort of type effect. But you look at the top 7 cards and you put 2 into your hand, the rest into your graveyard. It digs quite deep and does a lot of work. Sphinx Summoner. This is another card to search for artifacts because you're running a lot of Mana Rocks, and Diabolic Revelation. So I mean, some of my cards will tutor and some just look for artifacts. Now, the main strategy is to mill, so I'm running Altar the Brood, or Brood. So whenever a permanent enters the battlefield, each opponent discards, like, mills the card from top of their library. Mind Crank, you know, when everyone loses life, it's gonna happen, they start milling cards. And these are the 2 artifacts that I probably will be searching for with the Fabricates and such, and the Doubling Cube for sure. Mind Shrieker, this is kind of like a miniature Oona because it has an activated ability that you can use multiple times in a turn if you have available mana to do so. Target player puts the top card of his or her library into his or her graveyard, and it gets +X till end of turn, where X is the converted mana cost. So, you know, if you pay 6 mana to this and they reveal a land and let's say 2 non-land cards and they're both like 3/4, like, this could become an 8/8 and do a lot of damage. It has flying. It's very, I think, very good. This is a card that I think is even worth having as just a good solid creature. I might even put this in my Shu Yen deck because of the potential it has. It can really mess people up in their top of the deck tutors as well, because you can play this at instant speed. Now, Memory Erosion is whenever an opponent plays a spell, they mill 2 cards. I've had this card kind of do nothing for me, but I've also had it do a lot of work. It doesn't help you in the late game if they're already pretty well winning. This is a really good early game start. Sphinx's tutelage, whenever you draw a card, target opponent mills 2 cards. And then you can draw cards and kind of loot. Undead Alchemist, if a zombie you control would deal combat damage to a player, instead that player puts that many cards from the top of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Great mill card. And whenever a creature is put into the opponent's graveyard, you get 2/2 black zombies. So this also gives you creatures. Phoenix, I mean, I'm sure you all know of him. He's a 4/7 indestructible god that has the ability to tap creatures to mill your opponents equal to their toughness. Mirko Vosk, Mind Drinker. When it kind of has a Mind Funeral, I believe it is, on a stick. And Consuming Aberration, its power and toughness are equal to the amount of cards in your opponent's graveyards, if I believe. Yes, so this is really good in the late game, especially with Phoenix. Extractor Demon, this one I'm fooling around with. I'm kind of on the fence of taking it out, but you know, if you have permanents, creatures that are entering or leaving the battlefield, like if Oona's little 1/1 fairies die or you sacrifice them or do something with them, then this can actually mill your opponent quite a few cards. And then Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. This is exiles 2 permanents, and you know, if it attacks, you can mill somebody 20 cards. Definitely good. And they're exiled. I have a few utility cards that kind of help me discard my opponent's hand in some way or prevent them from drawing cards. So, Notion Thief. I have Hoden of Night's Reach, which if I have the other shrine in play, then I can mill them for 2 cards. Or force them to discard their cards. Dire Undercurrents, this one with the blue-black fairies that come into play can make your opponents discard cards. So this one's also very good. And Painful Quarry. Whenever an opponent plays a spell, that player loses 5 life unless they discard a card. And if they can't discard a card, then they just lose 5 life. So that's pretty good. I'm running 4 sacrifice outlets. I'm running Altar of Dementia, which can sacrifice creatures to mill your opponent. Ashnon's Altar, which also produces mana, which is very good for her ability. Mind Slash is one that I found recently, and I think it's a very powerful card. It can only be used as sorcery speed, so that kind of negates some of the benefit of a sacrifice outlet. But the ability to just sacrifice the 1/1 fairies and then look at their hand and discard a card of your choice is quite powerful, and you can use that multiple times in turn if you have enough mana to do so, and can make all your opponents hellbent and really control the game that way. You don't have to fear about counter spells or targeted removal if you make your opponents discard their hands, so that's really good. And this is another sack outlet that also makes your opponents mill cards. Discard cards from their hand. 2 cards that kind of benefit from the sacrifice mechanic is Dictator Erebos and Butcher Malakir. If you have a Grave Pact, include that too, but I'm kind of just trying to, whenever I sacrifice a creature, make my opponent sacrifice creatures. I'm not running too many targeted removal spells in this deck. I have a total of 5 board wipes. Cyclonic Rift, Aether Sprouts, which is instant speed, Evacuation's instant speed. Aether Gale is one that I've always just wanted to try out and play with. I think it has potential. There's a card called Hex that does something similar, but it destroys, I think, destroys creatures, and there has to be 6 creatures out there, which often there isn't enough. But this is 6 non-land permanents, so that's artifacts, enchantments, a whole range of things. And if you're having cards that can discard cards from their hand as well, then you can often bounce their cards into their hand and then make them discard them or mill or do something, right? So it's kind of a fun one. And same with Inunnuate, returning all non-blue creatures, because all my creatures are mostly blue. So then I need a few ways to protect Oona. I'm running Relic of Progenesis to exile my opponent's graveyards, and it cantrips. Swiftfoot Boots, you know, if you have Lightning Greaves, that's a better option, but this is what I have. The Bracers lets you use her ability twice, which is really nice to get extra value off of it. And then I'm running Counterspell. It's just the best counterspell there is, and besides Disallow. Disallow is really good as well. So then building an Oona deck isn't quite complete unless you have an infinite mana combo in some way. So this is my infinite combo to get mana and just mill everyone out in a single turn. I try not to run too many infinite combos, and this is a deck that I'm trying to make as has the potential of winning for sure. You never want to have a deck without a win condition. That's very important, but more of an introductory level deck where I can play against some people who are a little bit more casual. And I really do want to delve more into the two-color decks in the future, because they're a lot more lower budget. Finally, I am running a few cards that are kind of utility. So Sagittarius Sacrament. If you pay its kicker cost, you can search the library for 15 cards and exile them. That's really powerful. I like this card a lot, and I just haven't found a place to put into a deck yet, and I think this has a good home here. In the late game, you know, if they only have 15 cards left in the library, you just exile the 15 cards, right? Like, it's a powerful spell. Thassa, this makes your stuff unblockable and lets you scry every upkeep. Rite of Replication, I'm not running a huge amount of creatures, so being able to kind of copy the creatures that I do have is quite good, or my opponents have. Clever Impersonator is a clone, and Glen Eldra. Because you're running blue-black fairies, this will actually make all your creatures +2/+2 for the most part. So that can potentially win you the game through sheer combat damage. So my mana base is quite interesting because originally when I made this deck, before I added a lot of black cards, I really appreciated that Oona could become either a mono black or a mono blue deck. And there are some cards that I do want to throw into the deck and potentially use, like Mutilate if you have all swamps, or I think it's Engulf the Shore is you can bounce creatures equal to the amount of islands you control. Like certain things like that, Veldalkin Shackles. I really want to utilize some of these cards that are very good in monocolored decks, and that's why I'm running a lot of basics and also a lot of islands specifically. I didn't end up including some of those cards now in the current iteration, but I do want to rebuild this deck quite differently in the future. A lot of these cards I'm looking to maybe use into a Nicobolas sort of deck. So, because I think Nicobolas kind of does my mill / discard clone sort of esque effects a little bit better with access to red. But right now this is kind of what I have. So I have 17 islands and 7 swamps. I'm running all full arts. Just things that I like. I really like John Avon's islands. Then for non-basic lands, I'm running Ash Barrens because I'm only running 7 swamp, and I do often need 2 of them at any given time. So this can basic land cycle to find a swamp if I need it. Evolving Wilds and the Expanse can both be sacrificed to look for swamps. Temple of False Gods. I'm running a lot of budget dual lands. I don't really feel it's necessary to run shocks and fetches in a 2-color deck, because you only have 2 colors. So Dismal Backwater, Darkwater Catacombs, Demir Aqueduct, Temple of Deceit, Underground River. Bojuka Bog, this can get rid of graveyards. That's pretty powerful in this deck. And then the big ones is Cabal Coffers comboed with Urborg. And then I'm running Shrine of Nyx. Because I am in a 2-color deck, it's easy to say island or whatever, or blue mana, and then this tap for a lot more than it needs to. Or I can say swamp if I have all my lands becoming swamps, right? And then I'm running Command Tower, because Command Tower is just a staple card. So there you have it. So that is my Oona deck. I really do appreciate suggestions. This is a deck that I'm still toying around with and I'm not completely satisfied in. As you can tell, I want to rebuild it. I like her ability to mill, but I kind of want to have it as a deck that can do a lot more than just milling. Like, I feel like my deck has a lot of good ideas, but nothing fully fleshed out. Like, I haven't actually won too many games when I have playtested with it. It's really hard in a multiplayer setting to attack numerous opponents in a mill strategy. That's just really difficult. I know there's Keening Stone and a few that can really add to the deck, but this deck really is what it's trying to do is just ramp and draw lots of cards and get its combo and then win through the infinite mana range. Like, that's kind of the easiest way to win. The harder way to win is trying to get as many 1/1 fairies and then sacrifice and control the game by discarding their hand and milling the top of their library and just removing resources from your opponent. Opposition might be a good card for this deck and some other cards, but yeah, let me know your suggestions. Thanks for watching, I really appreciate it. I figured I'd use a special Demir playmat. It's very blue and black-esque colors, so this I just felt was the perfect playmat to use for this video. Yeah, and thanks for everything. Have a good week.